but it's not a crossover. Deal with it, man. Just deal with it. And lastly, a 1983 Mazda RX-7 13B twin turbo. Yes, very much yes. Huge fan of that. That's great. Connor Secondino. Hey, what's up, Connor? I know you're a longtime subscriber and fan. Welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. He says, why not all three? S2000, a Chevy SSR, and a Volvo R or Polestar stuff. I mean, why not? That's actually quite a nice garage. I'd be fine with that. That's a good garage to me. Got a rev happy S2000 that you could build out. Chevy SSR. The SSR is, what is that SSR? That was that truck looking thing. The SSR. Yes, yeah. So that thing's pretty cool. It's like a little concept D for me. I would actually take a Chevy HHR SS and make it, because it's like a little tiny panel van, which is kind of neat. And tune that out. I think that'd be kind of cool. And then Volvo V70R. I mean, obviously awesome. Definitely would do that. Ryan chimes in with an 07.5 S60R M66 Sonic Blue. Definitely a unicorn and a very cool car. Love that car. And Joe Keenan Brappy still driving an old RA40 Celica. Damn, that's cool. I dig that. That's neat. Big fan of that. Chad, what about you? You answer this question. Right. Probably zero. No one will get that reference, but it's cool. I got it, and that's what matters. Wait a second. You're saying that BMWs and German cars aren't easy? I find that super hard to believe. Also, you're right. Yeah. Absolute shit heap? Yeah.
Jeffrey, thank you for reminding me that I was muted. Appreciate that. Something I do every stream. So, oops. Sorry about that. Real quick recap. I grew up a JDM boy. Everything I looked into early on in my car life was, or car enthusiast as like a young adult, was JDM stuff, 2Js, RBs, Nissan V8s. I think are really cool and underutilized. Even Toyota V8s for that matter. Like I love me a good Japanese V8. I used to have a Lexus. I currently own an American car and a European car. The Mustang's the most fun, awesome thing I've ever owned. The C30 I'm really proud of because I did a lot of the work to it myself. So it's like that point of pride. Like like you look at it and I did a lot of work on that. It just roasted that dumbass in the GTI, and I helped. I don't know. It's really hard for me to pick between it, but I think just given my current tastes and like, would I buy a say budgets being equal, would I buy a JDM car and put the money into it that I'm putting into the Mustang? No. So I guess I got to go American. Got to go with the pride. I mean, American V8s. I mean, nothing like them. Even though the Coyote's not your classic American V8. Yeah, it's a weird question because like I want to say like you asked me this 5-10 years ago and I would have said JDM, 100% hands down. There I wasn't really crazy excited, about the American stuff. But I've owned the Mustang. Yeah, it's a little bit heavy, but it don't feel like it. It's surprisingly light feeling in the corners. It handles its girth quite well. Yeah, so there's a lot of cool like guys. You sit here like 83 Mazda RX-7. Yeah, like the 13Bs. You have to they're an acquired taste, but I understand the appeal of them, sort of. Mitsubishi Eclipse Daily, nice. You know, it's to each their own. And like this, with these questions, what I try to do every week, and what I try to kind of explain and kind of talk about with these types of things, is any answer is okay. It's one of those things. I don't mean to be like, oh, kumbaya, because let's face it, if you bought a Camaro, you had the wrong decision. If you buy a Saab, you're not as good as Volvo. And down the list and things like that. But like embracing the car culture is kind of cool. See what people have. Like I never would have thought an RA40 Celica would be in the comments tonight, but yet here we are. So so yeah, that's like that's kind of thing.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
crazy.
here's the thing. Like when it comes to like cars, like my interest really lies in
Chad, I actually have something to do. I apologize. My my youngest is crying, and I need to go see him. So I will be right back.
Godspeed. Like for me, it's a lot more of the working on cars, the builds, the kind of coming up with something different and creative. 2006 Hawkeye Subaru, for example, probably apart from the 22B, my favorite version of the Impreza. Those looked amazing. I loved the styling on it. They weren't as crazy as the Blob Eye, nor were they as bland as like current Subarus and the what the heck is it? The one right after the Hawkeye. I had it on the tip of my tongue. Greg would know the answer to this. He had a Subaru and dove into all things Subaru. But yeah, like I really wanted for a while. I really wanted a Hawkeye wagon, and put a pissed off motor in it and have just okay. So Subarus aren't exactly sleepers, but nobody expects a station wagon, and station wagons are cool, and we all should start buying them. We should all start buying them so we stop living in this crossover invasion that we're currently going. Should you keep it stock? I'm the wrong person to ask that question because no. You really should. I mean, when it comes to modifying cars and things like that, you got to sit down and you look at the car as it is. And you go, what do you want out of it? Is it not as visceral as you wanted? In which case you want to make it louder, exhausts and things like that. Is it something where you want to get a little more power, a little more this? Then you start looking at your bolt-ons, your things of that nature. If it's an aesthetic thing, you start looking at like body kits and things of that nature. It's really what you want out of the car. If you enjoy it as it is, and you don't really have any complaints, there's no reason to dive down that rabbit hole, because anytime you start modifying a car, it's not as simple as, hey, I want to upgrade the suspension on it. And now all of a sudden you realize, you're down the rabbit hole of, oh, I should do bushings. Oh, I should do mounts. I should do this. I should do this. So all of a sudden you say, oh, it's not that much to get a set of decent coilovers. But all of a sudden you're 3K into it. But I always, if you make a car unique, make it yours, make it different than other, like in your case, any other Hawkeyes, make it yours. If there's something on it that's going to make it, you like it better and kind of define who you are and help Greg move his chair a little louder, just go for it. Just go for it, man. Like, and it comes down to budget. Like those cars, WRXs and STIs in general are really fun cars stock. You can have a ton of fun. And maybe you put your money into going to more track days to enjoy the car, or autocross, or going to the drag strip, or stuff like that, instead of modifying. And then you kind of feel, okay, my car's a little weak on, I'd like my car to brake better for autocross or something. So you get better brakes. You'd like it to handle a little better. You get better like coilovers or a sway bar or things like that. And then you start to feel it like that. But if you're just going to blanket question me, should you modify cars? I will always say yes. Whatever it is, just go for it. Do it. Make it yours. Because, they say if you don't turn around and look back at your car every time you leave it, you bought the wrong car. And if you're not doing that and there's something that could help you do that, go out there and do it. You'll have a lot more fun. You'll find that a lot of these car communities are pretty nice in general. You just got to weed through some of the keyboard warriors. Every group has them.
Lots in this one.
Did they make that out of old head gaskets?
Yes, they did. It's a head gasket recycled koozie. It's quite lovely.
Ivan's over here saying,
I'm with you.
Ivan's over.
Hanson, where's the third guy? You're in the comments, dude.
We fired him. Your check will be in the mail.
It's infinitely less handsome now.
Yeah, we feel so bad for him sitting on a beach. Where was I? Yeah. Ivan, currently driving a Prelude. I really like the last generation Prelude, the boxier headlights and things like that. They're way ahead of their time. Nobody really realizes they have the 4-wheel steer in them. They're really good power plants, great fun. I'd love to see if you could, and this is exactly where my brain goes. Ooh, Prelude, great car as is, add a little power, add a little noise. You'd have a fantastic vehicle. Me, on the other hand, I'm like, I wonder if you could put an S2000 body or chassis underneath it for donuts.
That's a good one.
We have...
Jeffrey says...
Go.
He says Jeffrey has a 2019 XC40, Volvo XC40R design as his daily. Love it as is. Not much to modify on an XC40.
LS swap.
You'd be surprised, honestly. What did you say?
LS swap.
I mean, LS swap the world. But honestly, on Volvo products, you'd be very surprised. And if anyone's interested that does want to modify Volvo stuff, like from an aesthetic standpoint, check out Taiwan and check out China, because they have a lot of really cool body kits, carbon fiber bits, and stuff to actually modify. Taiwan especially, because there's a lot of Volvo SUVs over there apparently. They do cool air suspension kits. They do really nice wheels over there. They do a lot of aero and body kit packages and little functional bits wings and winglets and canards and whatever. So not that you'd want to go completely bonkers with an XC40, but great little car with a little bit of a drop in suspension. Everyone makes lowering kits for everything. You can do that, put suspension, put coilovers on it. You could do sway bars. You could do the Polestar tune for the engine. So you'd be surprised. I mean, if you wanted to, you could probably drop $5,000 to $10,000 on an XC40 without breaking a sweat, I'd imagine. So definitely a cool car. I love the XC40. Great little car. Probably one of the better looking Volvos, I'd say, right now. I just like its quirkiness and coolness and compactness of it. But yeah, you definitely could if you really wanted to. Clifton Ford goes, go ahead. What's that?
Clifton over here with the only stock EX Civic ever. Kudos to you for that.
Left in existence.
Question, are you planning on stealing DVD players anytime soon? Asking for a friend.
Or driving under 18-wheelers.
Crazy. I was just watching what was it? Matt Farah's channel, Smoking Tire.
Smoking Tire, yeah.
He does. He just recently drove what was it? It was, I forget the year, Civic. It's the one when they went to the kind of the sleeker, pointier style. I want to say around.
Oh, was it on Facebook? Did you see it on Facebook?
This was the 330 wheel horsepower, naturally aspirated, crazy.
The all-motor Civic.
Yeah.
I just watched that too. Yeah, that thing's awesome. So sick. Yeah, I would drive that. I would drive the get out of that
car. That thing was nuts. I mean, 14-to-1 compression, 9,000 plus red line. K motors are without question the motor outside of the two I have. So I have the Gen 2 Coyote and the 5-cylinder turbo actually not the 5-cylinder turbo, the NA 2.4 that we 5-cylinder is where those are the right now. And then third on that list are K motors, because redline power, that sort of a thing for, I love that concept of having a small engine that doesn't weigh a lot, makes crazy power, has a crazy red line. But then again, I mean, let's say you put that K motor in something light like a Miata or even an S2000, which a lot of guys put K motors in S2000s just because of how much stronger they are than the FA.
Yeah.
So it's like those are crazy good motor. I've never really been a huge.
They're good. They're good sleepers. They are really K motors are very sleeperish in that way. A lot of people don't expect them to be good because people have this misconception of Honda as like, oh, it's what you can't, if you want to be a tuner or like, if you want to get into cars but you can't afford real cars, like not true at all. Like like we showed last week on our stream, there's a K motor swapped Corvette. So like K motors are legit. They're
Oh,
really legit.
well, those who don't know anything just associate the cars they came in, right? And there's so many different
Right.
four cylinders, and they have the what you call it, but like people are K swapping everything. Like S chassis guys from
Yeah.
Nissan are doing K swaps. Because you can get a high power four cylinder engine. You can buy a K for 24, slap a turbo on it, do some basic reliability mods, and have a 400 to 500 horsepower
Yep.
engine without really trying that hard. It goes
Which
back,
is crazy to think about.
yeah, because Honda's still over engineering the crap out of their engines, and that's why, like, going back to our other question, JDM. When I got into cars, JDM engines were just so stupidly over-engineered that you didn't have to build the motor to make crazy horsepower. Like, you could just throw on some parts, boost them to the
Yeah.
moon and have a good time. Like
Yeah.
that's really really what's awesome about them. And
Yeah.
you know, Hanson casually
So we
dropping
got
that he's in Maui, seeing doing some civic spotting.
yeah, must be nice.
We moved
So
your
actually,
office to the back, by the way. You're now with the interns.
actually, I wanted to talk really quick about something totally different. Can we switch topics if that's cool with you? Is the actually to the support group for us, we have our first ever question for the live stream from that. So I think we should really kind of dive into that because it's honestly like a very loaded question because it's a
It's a
lot to it.
multifaceted
Um,
question.
It is. It's a multifaceted question, but I feel like there's a lot that's going to happen in the answer. But if any of you guys watching are interested, on Facebook we have a support group. It's called Shift Squad. You can go to our page and check it out. It is literally on the Facebook page itself. So if you go to the page and then just search for Shift Squad, or if you just search Shift Squad, you can basically become a member there. It's $5 a month. It helps support the stream. It helps support our other endeavors and YouTube and our website and what have you. But basically, we're going to be conversing with you, like what topics you want to hear on this stream. So if you want to go there and do that, that would be awesome. But this is where this first question is coming from, which is Hunter. He is a longtime subscriber and longtime watcher. So Hunter, thank you so much for this question. It's a really awesome question. And Chad, if you want to queue it up, if you got it up, we can kind of take a look at it because it's a lot.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of questions.
there's a lot of questions. So the improvements in automobile material quality and the subsequent reduction in automobile reliability across the entire industry, is the entire industry sacrificing R&D funds in a luxurious materials battle, or is this a consequence of the global technology sector right now? Can we increase and can we expect reading good? Can we expect an increase in reliability again, or is reliability going to trend down? And
So, I guess I mean I can go first on this one because on the whole, reliability is way up across the entirety of the auto industry. It might not seem that way because of recalls and a whole bunch of different other things that you see, but you have to understand that also back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and even into the 2010s, we didn't have the same level of heightened awareness of issues that we do now through social media, through other traditional forms of media, and things like that. So you really didn't hear about like crazy unreliability stories unless you really knew about them. So reliability is still way up across the board for a lot of different manufacturers. There are still ones that are down near the bottom of consumer reliability reports. For example, Volvo always is at the bottom now for consumer reports, yet I've literally never had a bad Volvo product in my garage, and I've owned 4 of them. So, take that as you will. However, uh, it's 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 not necessarily that they're improving material qualities, because they are improving material qualities across the board. There's different manufacturing processes now that make materials better and have more longevity, but it's also due to the fact of, there's just a lot more R&D that goes into this stuff now than they did back in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. 70s, 80s, and 90s was, here's a steel car, here's an iron block, shove them together, there's your car, go. There's no technology behind that, really. Like, there's aerodynamics and things like that, but that's for the day. Now it's more like electronic components. And Hansen actually just posted a really good point. Reliability will be less reliant on mechanical components and more reliant on software reliability and electrical components. Totally agree with that. And that's a perfect example of exactly what we're talking about here. So I don't think that the industry is sacrificing R&D funds for luxurious materials or in a luxurious materials battle. I think luxurious materials such as aluminum casting and things like that, they're becoming more accessible now because they're becoming cheaper to make and cheaper to manufacture and cheaper to bring to market for, companies like Honda and Toyota, which are traditionally a cheaper car. But across the board, I think that it's the reliability from a mechanical standpoint is still extremely high. We hear stories about like, oh, 96 Camrys never broke. Well, a ton of them broke because they're from 1996. If you take a car from today and do the same sort of time span, they're going to end up, a lot of them are going to end up breaking. But I think there's a common misconception now about, cars not being reliable or as reliable as they used to be. I don't think that that's a founded claim. I don't think it's a correct claim either.
I think a lot of this stuff. So if you look at the auto industry as a whole and look at where we stand, the car today is more reliable than it's ever been. We've kind of figured it out. And if you look at, let's just say hypothetically speaking, you're building a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine. There's not that much that differentiates a Ford 2-liter from a Toyota 2-liter to a Honda 2-liter to like this. Yes, they use different kind of internal components, but when you're talking bore and stroke, they're going to be all pretty much square, or they're all going to be pretty much the same, similar in things of that nature. I'm actually getting to that, Hansen, so great comment. But where the differentiating factors come in is like, a bunch of years ago, right, you wanted to get rid of your car and get the latest car if you could because it had Apple CarPlay or something like that, or it had navigation, or it had this, or it had that. Like all these different like infotainment type stuff that was like reserved for the high-end cars are now in everyday cars. You can have a great stereo, nav,
right,
Apple CarPlay, or Android Auto, all of these types of things in a Civic, and I'm not saying a Civic is a cheap car, but it's an entry level car. Like you don't, obviously that's the type of vehicle.
Yeah.
So all this stuff has kind of become common. So how do you stand out in this crowd? Well, you stand out in this crowd by how your car looks. That's why you're seeing a lot more cars kind of go for crazier styling. I mean, look at BMW, right? They had a classic design, and then they decided, what, this would look better if we modeled it after a beaver. And then gave the M3 just huge wheels. Like at no point did they ever, in the designing of that car, stand more than 3 inches away from it. Otherwise, but then the other team, who's not really, it's like, look, everybody will know that's a BMW. I mean, they're gonna hate it, but they're gonna know it's a BMW and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then you look at all these other things that differentiate, Correct. Gives you more for this sort of stuff. And then this brings me to Hansen's point. Mechanically, the new 2022 GTI is almost identical to the outgoing Mark 7, I believe it was. So the Mark 8 and the Mark 7 are, for the most part, the same mechanically. There are updates and things like that, as there are when you advance a car through different phases and stuff. But the bodywork's a little bit different, and I think it's a very good-looking car on the outside, very handsome, very Germanic in its styling. Really, really good-looking if you put it in an urban setting. But they just destroyed the infotainment system in that, like we talked about this a couple weeks ago with all the haptic feedback buttons, the having no concept of where you are in space as to, is this the volume? Is this this? Is this that? Like, to do the heated seats on there, you have to press the button 3 times that you can't feel, that you don't know where it is. So you just, nope, 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 nope. Like that sort of a
Yeah.
thing. So like, but all of that from a, if you were to boil it down to a construction standpoint, is exactly to spec. It's just some designer said we can do this cheaper.
Yeah.
We can have all the properties we want, and people have touchscreen phones, so they're gonna love this. Yeah,
Speaking of phones, Chad's goes off extremely
it's almost
loud.
like I had it next to my microphone, but it's like all that sort of stuff. So like, and
Perfect
you
timing.
see it in all these other things. Is that all these companies that do this end up going back to physical buttons because they the outcry, the journalists, like every journalist to a T is saying, you just slams the haptic feedback, and I haven't seen one person praise it. It's just, and so on. So any money you would lose in production costs, you're losing in sales. So, and here's the thing, like to what I was saying before, more complaints with cars now come from a user experience standpoint than a mechanical standpoint. So that is huge.
Yeah.
And to just swing and miss like Volkswagen did is, well, a big deal.
Yeah, and for those that aren't aware of what we're talking about, if you go to our YouTube channel, which is just Shifting Lanes, and you take a look at Hanson's recent review of the 2022 Volkswagen GTI, you'll find that it's a great car, but it's very much let down because of its infotainment system. And, VW just really kind of missed the mark on that. And I think that this is the same sort of path that Cadillac took when they introduced the Q infotainment system, and everyone hated it. It had these stupid haptic things. No one liked it, and it was just not a good overall user experience from a car infotainment perspective. And that's why you saw haptic stuff kind of go away. They're trying to bring it back. My guess is that people are going to be like, what is this? This is terrible, and it's going to go away again. So with that said, to kind of wrap up the question, are we seeing less reliable cars today? No. Is there a luxurious materials battle, or is the industry sacrificing R&D funds for these luxurious materials? No, I don't think so. Is it a consequence of the global technology sector right now? Yes, because that's where the true unreliability is going to be moving forward, is from electrical systems and not necessarily mechanical systems. To Chad's point, a 2-liter is a 2-liter is a 2-liter. They're all measured a little bit differently, but we pretty much have the 2-liter 4-cylinder engine nailed, regardless of where you're kind of getting it from. Can we expect an increase in reliability again? Yes, definitely. Especially with the EVs, there's less mechanical parts to fail. Obviously, even on the most reliable mechanical stuff, 2-liter 4-cylinder engines, there is a failure point to those. Whereas with EV motors, there's less of failure points because there's less working parts to that. There's more electrical stuff. So, it's going to be this balance moving forward of what's going to be a bigger mechanical failure, what's going to be a bigger electrical failure, if there is one. So we'll see. I think the reliability will continue on a linear trend moving forward, kind of how it has.
Okay. Yeah,
that's
it's
a
really
great
cool
question.
to sit back and actually think about that stuff. And like Greg said, if you want to get involved, if you want to ask us questions, if you want us to have something devoted to a question, a comment, a build, if you got a really sweet car, come on down, send it to us. That's where we're going to be pulling all of that sort of stuff, and we're going to hopefully do one of these once a week. Just kind of catching up here. Clifton Ford again. Is it true when people say aftermarket parts are less reliable than OEM? Both. So yes and no. So
yes.
Here's so aftermarket fixes can fix some issues. So I'll give you a perfect example of it. I just got suspension parts for the Mustang. It's the Steeda Stop the Hop kit. And what tuners and stuff were noticing with the Mustang is, and I have a 2015 Mustang for those of you who don't know, is that under heavy acceleration, under heavy launching and things like that, wheel hop became an issue. And wheel hop, to anyone who knows, it breaks axles. If your axles are strong, it breaks diffs. It can break drive shafts. It can even break your transmission. It's going to find the weak point in your driveline. And that came down to the fact that it wasn't quite where it should be as far as from a design. It was good for a road car and everything like that. But when people started doing performance driving, they actually relocate the subframe a little bit. They strengthen and they really reinforce the whole structure because of the independent rear suspension and things like that. They really reinforce that whole structure, toe links and all this other sort of stuff, and that makes for a much better handling car, makes getting power to the ground a heck of a lot easier. It makes everything in the rear of that suspension a lot more stable and a lot less prone to flexing. So that is an example of aftermarket parts absolutely making the car better, and not just making it better for enthusiasts like us. Let's face it, you buy a Mustang GT, a V8, you're going to want to drive it in a certain way. Doing that, I would recommend, I'm going to eventually make a video on it, but that is the most important mod any S550 Mustang owner can make. It just shores up the rear end, and and as long as you're not a absolute jackwagon, you're going to have more rear I mean, I haven't hit any crowds yet. How many other Mustang owners can say that after 2 years of ownership?
Ooh. Not many. So keep doing that.
So that's one case of it. But there's other stuff that where, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, let's just say Greg's got the Polestar now. He wants a new turbo manifold for it. He wants a machine matched turbo manifold, pretty much the equivalent of headers for turbos. And he goes out there and he finds an inexpensive part that wasn't welded correctly. So now there's all these stalactites and stuff inside of it. And of course, exhaust gases moving quite quickly. They're hot. Everybody's seen pictures of an exhaust running cherry red and stuff. Those stalactites break. Where do they go? Into your turbo and then out your exhaust. So you're tearing up your turbo. You're tearing up your catalytic converter. You're tearing up your muffler. You're tearing up your whole exhaust system, all because it was a cheap part. And then lastly, anything you do to add power to a car takes time off the end of its life. This engine was designed to go for 200,000 miles at this power level and not much. So if you increase power by 50%, you're cutting off the tail end. But then it goes back to our question of the week. These engines are so reliable now that as long as you're not really pushing the components to their absolute limit, you can have a modified car, Mustang, and you can have a lot of horsepower, 650 at the wheel hopefully, and you can it'll last for a really long time, assuming I don't beat the ever-living piss out of it. Probably.
Yeah, I was actually going to make that point too. Like, it depends on what part you're talking about, because if you get like a built transmission and keep the rest of the car stock, well, that's technically an aftermarket part, and that transmission probably will have a better build quality than like the normal stock one. So you probably will have a more reliable part in that sense. A great point about this is my old Volvo V70R, because we have a big Volvo following because we've done Project Volvos on YouTube and stuff like that. But the V70Rs have a 5-cylinder engine that's transversely mounted, and they are glorious sounding engines. They're some of the best sounding engines, in my opinion, a top 5 sounding engine of all time. So cool. However, there is an inherent build quality flaw because it's an open deck and there's actually gaps between the cylinder walls. So that is just an unreliability part of the manufacturing process. But if you open up the engine and put shims in there, or if you totally gut it and do sleeves, like totally sleeved blocks, that is an aftermarket part or an aftermarket solution to a known OEM defect. So it depends on what you're talking about. There are improvements to OEM stuff. From a Honda standpoint, as far as reliability is concerned, you're probably not going to get a ton of parts that are going to have a better build quality than the OEM stuff. For aftermarket stuff to go fast, there are oodles of parts from the Honda and JDM perspective that are very reliable, that are well known from really good manufacturers, that will give you a ton of long-term reliability as far as aftermarket parts are concerned. So it's a yes and no scenario. I'd say the best example of this is a Subaru WRX, because so many people tune those cars and they're just known to be super unreliable cars. I owned a Subaru WRX for 5 years. I didn't do a damn thing to the drivetrain, to the engine, to the suspension, to anything. The only thing I did to the only thing I did to that car was put white line sway bars on it. That's it. It's the only thing I did to that car to introduce body roll. My car was bulletproof for 5 years. Nothing happened to it. And then you hear about these stories of like head gaskets blowing, ringland failures, and blah blah blah.
Wheel
Well, that's because
studs.
people
Wheel
tune it,
studs.
and oh well, yeah, the wheel studs, but that's a known issue for a lot of different manufacturers. BMW has that issue too. However, uh, from like a typical Subaru failure point thing is like head gaskets and all that ringland failure stuff and whatever. Those I didn't have a problem with because I didn't modify the car. I didn't try to push 500 horsepower through a horizontally opposed 4-cylinder engine with a 5-speed that's known to not be the greatest thing in the
How
world.
have we been friends for almost 25 years?
Everything else was fine. It's a good question, and I don't
Um,
know the answer.
so just want to catch up real quick with some comments here. Um, Clifton, is there any good places to find parts for Honda? I always start with the JDM scene, starting with Injuku, and kind of going from there. As you get more, again, it really depends on what you want to do with it, and really what it's all about the fun factor or the it factor for it, and then just starting from there, having a and prioritizing those things when modifying a car. It's all well and good to sit here and say, well, I have 200 horsepower stock. I want to get that to 350. It's going to be a ripper, blah blah blah. But if you don't touch the suspension, you're never going to be able to use that power. Whereas if you touch the suspension first, you add better brakes, you're going to feel like you're going faster, and you've added no power. Same thing with like an exhaust. It's that placebo effect. I have more power because I can hear it, but you don't. An exhaust really adds minimal horsepower. Rule of thumb is if you don't increase your horsepower by 10%, you're not really going to feel it, especially in the lower power levels. So just keep that in mind. Scott Prost comments, went through this 20 years ago, plus some pro audio. You're right, eventually they went back designing mixers with knobs and slides like other analog equipment. Still all updated digital circuits with, analog appearance. So, that's another industry saying, this is crap, let's change it, and going back to it. And yet auto manufacturers still insist on making this, this mistake. Ivan's wasted money on getting the car clean just so it the pollen and living in New Jersey, that's something I'm gonna have to deal with very soon. I avoid trees like I can, but every week washing the car is kind of a necessary evil. Someone called shifting lanes says, to be fair, most Mustangs hits crowds in less time than that. I'm a responsible driver, and save your having fun for back roads, the track, things like that. I know I sound like a dad right now, even though I'm not one.
Yeah.
Go figure. But have your fun in places where when your talent
I'm the
runs
resident
out,
dad here.
your car and your safety's at risk, and you're not putting others at risk. In fact, if you're driving in such a fashion that's going to put that at risk, stop. Go to a track where there's facilities for that and everything like that. Have fun, but just be responsible with it. Because remember, you drive like a dickhead, it's gonna just look. It's just not a good look for all of us. As enthusiasts, as I'm currently going through with a jackwagon and a VW in my development. Story for another day. But Hanson made a good point. I have a 100-yard commute. I would actually say that that's even more in my favor. So when I drive the Mustang, I'm driving it more for fun than for as an actual vehicle. And yet while doing so, I still have maintained it to keep it on the pavement and not really have any sort of issues with it. Let's see.
So I think we should go to a bit of news that we found because it's actually really interesting. It sort of goes along the lines of enthusiast stuff that we're talking about, car modifications, whatever. I think we should get onto the Supra news because I think the Supra news has already been mentioned in stream because the Supra not being a Toyota product, I think is a really interesting thing. And we have a very interesting bit of news because apparently the Supra is almost definitely getting a manual.
Yes. I believe that's the exact headline from
is that gonna...
Road and Track as of today, the 7th. Leaks have moved beyond rumors with alleged official documentation on the car posted to an image-sharing platform, Imager. According to the photos, the manual transmission will be offered for the 2023 and only on the 6-cylinder Supra. Toyota very obviously does not respond to the speculation or anything like that. But here's the headline.
Yeah. Here's
the headline for that. The Supra, I mean, this is kind of twofold. So right now, what we're seeing on screen is Hanson's review of the most recent Supra, and the bullet points here is that, like Greg mentioned before, there would be no Supra if it wasn't for the BMW collaboration. So you can look at it and go, it's not a true Supra, or you can say we would have one less sports car. So even if you look at it as a BMW, even if you look at it as not a real Supra, take the nameplate off of it and it's another sports car we otherwise wouldn't have had without this collaboration. And the biggest gripe I've had with this car is that it didn't have a manual box. It had an automatic and things like that. And things like the new 400Z or whatever they're going to call it is going to have a manual, similar horsepower, similar like that. So putting a manual in the Supra makes it like, don't call it BMW trash until you actually get behind the wheel and drive one with a manual box in next year, because I promise you, you're going to enjoy the hell out of it. The engine might be a BMW, makes a great noise. The suspension, great in the twisties. And now that you're rowing your own gears, you're not going to care whose name is on the parts. You're just going to care that you're having a really good time, because if you got the equivalent Z4, it would be a floppy mess compared to this. Well, not this. This is apparently a Hyundai commercial. But you get what I'm saying.
Yes. Watch the ads. Give us revenue. But yeah, like I'm totally on board, and I agree with that complete thinking, because everyone that's a hater of the new Supra, everyone is just like, oh well, Toyota didn't make it. It's a BMW product. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, cool. Get over it. It's already happened. It's been happening for 4 years now. You know, shut up. I mean, honestly, like, it's such a tired trope that like everyone is. It's a really really tired opinion, honestly, and it's a wrong opinion at this point, because everyone that doesn't understand the whole supply chain process is everyone that's complaining about it. So when everyone's like, oh, but I rather we just wouldn't have had it, and I'd rather we just wouldn't have. So we wouldn't have had a new Supra because this isn't a Supra. There's two arguments always whenever you see it on online trolls is it's a BMW. I wish they didn't make this collaboration at all, or it should have been this world-beating Halo car. Neither of those are correct, because if they didn't do this Supra, they would have had another crossover probably to make more money. They didn't have to make this car jointly with BMW. They would have been just like, oh, well, we'll just make another crossover and sell to the masses, and screw you enthusiasts. We don't care about you. Ooh, thunder. The other side of this,
it's pouring here.
Yeah. Oh, really? We just got massive lightning over here. I was like, whoa, that was brighter than my Halo light over here that I'm looking at. The other side of it is like, I wish it was this Halo car. It's like, that's not what the Supra was. It never was a Halo car. I mean, not to the Halo car.
I'm going to stop you right there. So, in the Supra, in its performance, was way up there. Like, everybody lauds the Supra for being over-engineered. Yeah. Here's the problem, and here's what nobody wants to admit when they're talking about the Supra in general, and that is the Mark IV Supra killed the Supra. Yes, it's the best version of that car, but it was a Toyota that cost basically high-end Lexus BMW money, and it was still a Toyota. Right. It was way too expensive. Yes, it was an amazing piece of engineering, but it didn't sell. It was right. It wasn't. It didn't make any money. So Toyota saw this and said, we can't afford that, because they did the exact same thing with the LFA. Yeah. World-beating car spared no expense. Like, hey, it's made out of aluminum, but it'd be better if it was carbon fiber, like playing that dance and stuff like that. Yeah. Here's the thing. If they engineered it and built it to this level, i.e. with a straight 6, with all the things that it has, the car would cost 50% to double the price. And at that point, this is not nobody's going to go for that when there's much more established vehicles. So this collaboration was necessary.
Right. Yeah, I agree with all of that. My problem is with the people that are saying that the old Supra and the Mark IV Supra is a Halo car. It's not. It never was. It was a fantastic sports car for its day. It was not a Halo car the same way that everyone is hyping it up to be, because everyone thinks that 1,000 horsepower Supra was what the Supra was built to do. That's not what it was built to do. It was not even known for the first, like, I don't know, 6-7 years of its lifespan, that 2JZ was really that stout. And we had examples of it um, from the Mark III Supra and other tunable turbo cars from Toyota from the 80s and early 90s. But the problem is everyone thinks that the 1,000 horsepower Supra was like what they were gonna make for this Supra, because that's the other argument online, and that's what I have a problem with. Is everyone was saying that this should have been like a McLaren or Ferrari, whatever, be, rivaling sort of car, or like an NSX for a better, Japanese sort of comparison with Acura versus Toyota. Everyone keeps saying like, oh yeah, it should have been on the same level as the NSX. No, it shouldn't have. That's never what the Supra was.
Well, here's the disconnect.
That would have been the same sort of disconnect.
Back in the day, these were they were all built to the same rule book, right?
That would have been the
now. The GTR changed that rule book.
Right.
Acura followed suit, so we could either get a $120,000 Supra or something more people can afford. Just because the other two went crazy with horsepower and tech and stuff like that, Toyota dumbed it down to the essence of a sports car. And more people can afford and drive it and have fun with it, which is what sports cars are about. Who cares where it came from?
Yeah. Correct. And that's what this manual is going to do. I think that if they introduce the manual, which they have said in this Mark V Supra the whole time, if there was enough demand for it, they would make it. So apparently people have whined and bitched and moaned about it enough that they're going to do it. So I'm very much for that. And quite honestly, we'll get to it later in the stream, like, that would be on my top 5 list for sports cars I would buy, to be quite honest with you, because the platform's great. They're incredibly tunable from what the last 4 years have shown us. They are not having a ton of failures at any of the typical BMW failure points. And they just seem like a really solid overall car. And Hansen has had, whoa, just started pouring here. Took me by surprise. Everything from what Hansen said is in these reviews, it's a great car. It really is a great car. I don't really care if it's a BMW or not. It's just a great car. And it's another sports car. It's not a crossover. Or the other big argument with people with internal combustion right now is like yet another EV. Guess what? It's not another EV either. So, manufacturers are going to get tired of this constant complaining from the enthusiast community. Oh, I wish it was this. I wish it was this. They're just going to not cater to any of us at some point. And they're just going to be like, here's your crossover, go commute somewhere. And that's
clearly, if this is a possibility, if the manual transmission is a possibility, it's probably following suit with the, I think it was, what was the first GT3? The 991? The 991 GT3 didn't come with a manual. And the Porsche Pures
PDK only. That's right.
So what Porsche did was they said, okay, you want a manual GT3? Here's the 911R. The bean counters didn't think they were going to sell a ton of them. They immediately sell out, and boom.
Yeah. Sold out.
Used it for money to make another transmission. So obviously the Supras are selling well and enough automatic to where they can take the risk of putting a manual and having X amount of those cars over here and things like that. So obviously, despite what the haters are saying, it's still a good car and people are still buying them. Before we move on, I just got a couple comments here from Anton, who's all for manual transmissions in sports cars, hot hatches, etc. Might be a little too late for the Supra because it's a mid-cycle refresh and only have the manual for 2 model years left in its life cycle, when the new Z is about to get a manual early in the beginning of its life cycle, and it is coming out for its entire 5-year life cycle. Effectively, it's too late. It's not going to save it. Okay, there's probably some back end sides of that I can get behind and things like that. But again, whereas we wouldn't have had I would rather have a sports car that has a Toyota badge and is all BMW parts bin car than no sports car at all. I would rather have a manual for the last 2 years of the production run than none at all. Because again, you brought up the 400Z. Or the new Z, I think. That's another reason why this is coming with a manual, because that car is going to eat into Supra sales, and they're like, wait, but now we have a manual and things like that. So there's a lot to it. I think the Nissan Z pushed Toyota like, okay, we're selling enough. We're gonna have this competitor. It's probably gonna eat in if we don't cater to that enthusiast a little bit more. And then it kind of brought it to that. And then his second point.
Yeah.
And Greg, I'll let you go first after I ask this one. Question for you both: Mark IV Supra or first gen Honda NSX? Which is or which was the better 90s or 2000s, I'm guessing, car? If you had to compare the two in a review when they both had the same price, same drivetrain, and so on. So basically, Mark IV Supra or the first iteration of the NSX. Go.
Great question. Two very different cars, honestly. They're, you know, they didn't have, I don't even think they had the same price back then. I don't think that they don't have the same drivetrain. I know it's rear wheel drive, but one's a mid-engine layout, other one's a front engine layout. However, I would probably take the NSX, just because I know that Ayrton Senna had a hand in developing it a little bit. And I think that that's really cool and a really cool historical point to that car. I also think it looks cooler than the Mark IV Supra. Mark IV Supra is a cool looking car. There's just something about a mid-engine Ferrari fighting Honda NSX from Japan that really kind of like makes me more interested in that than a Mark IV Supra. The whole thing with the Mark IV Supra is the engine, and it's a cool car, like I said, but it's more of just like a legend in everyone else's mind, as opposed to a legend like on paper. Like I feel like the NSX is just a better buy. Over time, I feel like they're going to appreciate a lot more in value. I think we're just in a Supra bubble right now, and then it's just going to burst, and then the NSX is going to go crazy.
So there's a couple things to that. For me personally, this is something Greg Canson and I were actually talking about a few weeks ago. So back when I bought my IS 300, and this will tell you just what prices and things have skyrocketed and things like that. When I was looking to buy my IS 300, at the same time there was an NSX for about $5,000 to $6,000 more, and that was about it. Just crazy to think about. This was years ago, probably almost 10, 12 years ago, maybe even more than that. And I was like, can I daily an NSX? Like, that'd be a pretty badass car, but it was going to be my only car. So I ended up with the IS 300. Kind of wish I had gotten the NSX because, I mean, that's would have, yeah. I've always liked the NSX. But before I kind of go too much further than that, here's the thing with the Mark IV Supra, and I touched on it before. It was over-engineered. Everybody thinks it was just over-engineered in the engine. And that 2J was just designed just to be, again, over-engineered. And, especially when you consider the gentleman's agreement in Japan, where I don't think you could have more than 276 horsepower at the time. So, like, to make a car that literally on stock internals, you could turn up to 1,000 or reliably have it 650, 700 horsepower. It was probably... it was probably just an evolution of the engine they already had, and it turned out to be very strong. So, like, when you look at it, it's like this car is capable of crazy horsepower or crazy reliability, and reliability is kind of where it was a goal, especially when you're looking at 320 or 330 horsepower in the USDM market. Now, but it outbraked Ferraris of the day. For its weight, it was a very good handling vehicle, and what most people forget about the Supra is it wasn't designed to be a sports car. It was designed to be a Japanese Mustang. It was designed to be a pony car, a 2+2,
right,
and all that other sort of stuff, and everything. And there was, Greg Hansen, they'll tell you there was a phase where it was 2J the world. Greg bought a new car, I'm going to put a 2J in it. Hansen bought a new car, it doesn't have a 2J, it doesn't exist. Just because of that engineering prowess in that era. And everything. But I've always had a soft spot for the NSX. But here's the thing. If you put an NSX with the pop-up headlights in front of me or a Mark IV Supra, I'm going to take the Mark IV Supra. If you put a NSX in front of me that has the fixed headlights, so the second kind of the update on the body, it's NSX all day long, just because it's a more. It's really raining over there, isn't it? Yeah.
Wow, you can hear that?
If it's that like this one, the fixed headlights and stuff,
Yeah,
I'm
that's the
choosing
rain.
NSX all day because the NSX is just a more interesting car. It's a more focused car. Uh, it was in its day effectively what Porsche always strived to be, and that is a daily driverable supercar. And there were some limitations with like the transmission, how much power you could put through it. I also would prefer the 3.2 liter engine just because it makes a little bit more torque and is a little more advanced to the 3 liter. But the NSX is just an interesting car, and when you see these things wide bodied the right way, they're just absolutely gorgeous. To your last point of it, Anton, make it happen, and I'll gladly do a comparison review between both of these cars. I think I'll make the time for that one.
Yeah, I agree. I would be very much okay with that. So yeah, I mean, it's so to kind of wrap up this little bit, the manual Supra, it's coming. I really hope it gets here sooner, and I hope that they keep the Supra around for longer because it's a cool car, and I hope that they keep the manual around for longer. And I would definitely put it on my list of cars to buy, sports cars to buy, top 5.
Yeah,
Honestly.
I can absolutely agree with that.
That I think it's cool. You know what else is a really cool car, Chad?
Oh, I thought you were
Old
going to say
Cobras.
something different.
Oh, there are a lot of cool cars, but old Cobras are also very cool cars. Especially when they come with carbon fiber bodies.
Carbon fiber the world.
And fully carbon fiber bodies.
There it is. So this
That is so gorgeous. This is like strong photography.
Yeah, like
so
I mean, if
good.
you paint this, you should have to serve prison time.
Yeah, great. Look at that.
So
Look
what
at
we
it.
are
Oh,
what
so
we are
good.
actually looking at is a real thing. This isn't a one-off. This is actually from Shelby American. No,
Not a wrap
anyone who
either.
wraps in faux carbon fiber, again, someone who deserves prison time. So this is they're building in a limited run of extra special Cobra continuation race cars for the 60th anniversary of Shelby. Limited to just 10 examples, these Cobras will have the option of 800 horsepower and a uniquely designed carbon fiber body that weighs literally 88 pounds.
So, well, first off, think about 800 horsepower in a Cobra, a car that basically weighs nothing to begin with. Then you put a carbon fiber body that weighs actually nothing at all, and you're throwing 800 horsepower into what's essentially what? Between 1,000 and 1,500 pounds of car? It's absurd.
You're definitely
and
looking
I
at
love
the
it. It's
1
so
ton
cool.
of a vehicle and stuff like that. That's a rocket ship, and at the same time a very interesting way to write your suicide note. Because 800.
Yeah.
These things are short wheelbase cars with a ton of power. You got to be awake when driving them. Like it's this. So
Yeah. Man,
so,
it's just
but,
so
oh my
great.
gosh, absolutely. And because they make the 800 horsepower
I'll just
version,
park
that's the one you
that.
have to buy. Because when you see one, you're going to be like, and you got the less horsepower version, you're just going to be like, oh, depression increasing. But, so
Yeah. Not that you
they could
need
have
the
they could have
800
done this with
horsepower. but
550
that's the one
horsepower
you
and
want.
people would have lost their shit. The fact that it comes with 8. So
Oh, yeah, for
that
sure.
800 horsepower actually comes from a Gen 3 Coyote. I've been telling you, it's a great engine.
Nice.
It's obviously boosted via a
Really
VMP
good
supercharger kit. If you're unfamiliar, VMP makes great products for a lot of American muscle cars, specifically the Mustang. They do a really good job with that. 6-piston roll-with brakes will help slow you down. And these are called the Diamond Edition
Barely.
and an elite team, and will be assembled by an elite team of designers and technicians at Classic Recreations. T56 Magnum manual gearbox, and these are like you get an actual serial number. These are legit Shelbys. I think these things are gonna this is basically the genesis of this, and why I think these are going to be crazy collectible in a few years down the road, is that Jason Engel, who's the founder of this Classic Recreations, is Carroll Shovel taught me the significance of pushing the envelope through innovation and a passion. A dream of Carroll's was to always place the highest horsepower engine possible in the lightest, most agile car imaginable, and it is our honor to have met that challenge. Now, if you're thinking this is all way too good to be true, how do I leave a deposit, and how much is this going to cost? It's going to cost $1.2 million. Which is a lot. But like I said, I think...
Well, and so what's the next topic?
Yeah, but like I said, I think you'll obviously see these.
Yikes.
They'll do that usual thing. They'll dip. They'll come back up. But I think down the road, just because of the spirit of this vehicle, I think we're looking at one of those 20-year collectible cars where you're like, it was expensive new, but now it's really expensive. And I mean...
Oh, yeah. If you could buy it now, I mean... You're gonna be very rich and just off this car in about 20 years,
but,
for sure. It'll at minimum triple to quadruple in value in that amount of time.
Beautiful. I mean,
minimum.
Honestly, everything should be naked carbon fiber.
I know it. I could just sit here the rest. I could just sit here the rest of the stream and just do this. If you could just keep this on.
Are you sure?
Rotation
because I mean, I think you're going to be excited about our next topic, and some of the Volvoists are going to be.
I know what it is.
We are talking about a 1972 Nope, I mean one of those.
Yes, this thing is so unbelievably gorgeous. I mean, I got more excited seeing this than the Cobra because look at that thing. Oh, I love modern design. Cobras are cool, carbon fiber bodies are cool, but look at that beauty. That's cool. I mean, Polestar, 2-door, coupe sports car, EV, because Polestar is, it's Volvo's, EV arm now. But man, if that thing came out, sign me up. I'm on the list. If it came out just like that, that's cool. I mean, it's beautiful, and there's some cool features to it. One of which is this car comes with a drone that actually will detach from that little slit in the back, that little line that went down the back of the hatch or the rear deck there. The drone comes out of there and pops off, and it can go 56 miles an hour and follow you and record you, which is cool. That's pretty amazing. But I mean, that gimmick aside, look at that. That's just, I mean, that is a masterclass in modern design.
What we're looking here, this is a concept that right now, an electric roadster, a hardtop convertible, and it's basically to offer a blend of open top performance and thrilling driving experience in the electrical era. Yay. So what it is it's built on a bespoke aluminum platform that is shared with the Polestar 5. I hadn't realized that we were up to 5. I only knew about Polestar 2, but,
Yeah, there's a bunch. Three through, well, 3's coming out as an SUV, but 4 and 5 are essentially just concepts.
So it's based on the 5. Polestar's R&D team in the UK promises to deliver tight body control, high rigidity, and intuitive dynamics. The chassis is also geared towards heightened dynamic response, which managed to provide small roll angles and high roll damping. The steering wheel is also tuned to be agile, direct steering feel with linear engagement, with great steering torque buildup. Whoever wrote this article, I have no idea, but basically, here's an electric roadster. It looks great. It's going to be fast because electric car. And I mean, This is what, let's face it, when you eliminate the internal combustion engine, what you have left is the car's the way it drives and the way it looks. And this is another one of those examples. If you owned one of these, you could you're going to want to turn around and look at it every time you walk away. And that is what a car is supposed to do. This is beautiful. It is elegant. It is. And the great thing about Polestar is they have no tradition to try to uphold, right? I mean, yes, there's a Volvo tradition, and yes, I would
Right.
like the Polestar
Right.
6 to be a 240 wagon that's all electric, but I mean,
That would be
I
awesome.
mean, talk about electric utility and so on. But this thing,
Yeah. So I'm gonna say something really controversial here. This is the best looking electric sports car ever designed. I think this is probably one of the best design concepts ever made. I've been kind of going back through like my folder. I'm a huge design nerd. I've in the last 10 years really gotten into aesthetics of cars and design and things like that. And I have a folder on my laptop or my desktop that basically just has a ton of different concepts and design cues from the auto industry for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Um, this is probably it's in my top five ever. It's in it's probably the to me it's the best EV sports car, at least design ever, because there you have a roadster that looks like a super sports car. What's a speedster? Like it looks like a 911 speedster. It's and there it looks like a performance coupe or coupe
we talked
in
about
sort of
this
the
in the
same vein as the
vlog.
Lotus
It's
Evija
coupe.
that's coming out. We
Yes,
have
but
fans elsewhere, Chad. Coupe, coupe, whatever.
yes, but
It's
when
a
they
two
talk
door
to
and
us,
it's
they're not going to
awesome.
say coupe because we say it that way. They're just going to say coupe. So,
Yeah, true, true. Either way, whatever. Coupe, it doesn't matter how you say it. It's awesome, and it has this like speedster sort of feel to it. I mean, to me, again, yeah, this is the best EV concept car ever designed. I think. I mean, the rear haunches are amazing. The wide bodiness to it, the way that everything sort of curtails into the doors, the rear light bar, everything works beautifully. And I think Volvo's design team on the whole, and that extends to Polestar, obviously, they are some of the best design people for lack of a better word. They're one of the best design teams on the planet, and this just sort of speaks volumes to that. Like this is it way blew away my
well, this is
expectations
what
for
you
this thing.
wanted from Polestar from the beginning, right? I mean, okay, so it's electric. Let's just
Yeah,
drivetrain aside. The way this thing's going to perform, the way it looks, and the segment it's slotting itself into, right? Polestar was a race team who became a performance arm like AMG. Then they became, the EV arm, and then immediately made a hybrid, not in a full electric vehicle. Um, but now they're all electric from here forward, as far as I understand it. This is what you expected, man. Like you came from racing. This is it, man. Like your Polestar S60, you know, is the AMG version of that Volvo, but or the M car, whatever you want to call it. But like, yo,
right.
let's go because AMG has the GT, and Polestar now has this thing. Okay, so it's an electric car.
Yeah,
So what? I mean, you look at that car and it's gorgeous. You
yeah.
step on the
Look at
throttle,
it.
and okay, you're not going to have the acoustic drama that you would with a internal combustion engine car, but the fact that your ass is going to be firmly planted in the seat, in addition to the rest of you, is going to add a new
Yes.
form of excitement. I mean, the NHRA changed their rules for street legal cars because electric cars and the Demon, but mostly because these electric cars are running 9-second passes and
Yeah.
without touching.
Out the
I mean,
box.
there is a part of me that's
Out the
sad that
box.
there's not really much you can do from a custom standpoint. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to sit here and add a cold air intake to my electric motor and make it make 5 extra horsepower. But there's
Yeah. Though you may be able to do that in the future with like electric motor
right,
cooling and stuff like
because I
that.
mean
So
the motor is limited
things
by
like
the
that could happen
input,
in the
and
future.
the input's limited by the battery. So you could like there's going to be stuff to do and things
Right.
like that. But I mean, really, do you need something faster than nine
Sure.
seconds? No, no, you don't. That is
No,
fast.
no
That
one
is
does,
not.
and
That
they
is
shouldn't sell
that
that to
is
the general public either.
918 Porsche fast. Think
Yeah,
about that.
that's crazy. And I was actually just you guys probably saw me like do this. I was actually on one of these pictures.
Keeps.com.
Um, uh, the front tires on this, you can actually see in one of the pictures, they're 255 35s. So that means I would imagine it's a staggered setup on this thing. You're probably looking at like 285, 295 rears. So just based on tire specs, they are making this into a performance car.
Well, the shape,
I mean,
and the tire specs.
If you look at it purely from that,
I mean, this thing's gonna be fat. If it's like the Polestar 1, carbon fiber is a very real possibility for the body, if not the entire construction. If they're going from, I mean, they say it's based on the Model 5, so we'll have to wait and see. Like, I don't know enough about the Model 5 to say what it's based on, but I'm guessing some form of aluminum chassis.
Yes.
Thank you, Connie. Corinne Hepworth goes, I'm your biggest fan, Chad. No love for Greg, but, you know, Connie's the best, so we can't really argue with her. But
Connie, we'll get your taste better, you know, as we go along here. You know, you'll slowly come to understand.
But like, this thing is, you know, so obviously heavy because of the batteries and things like that in there. But they proved with the Polestar 1 that you could have a girthy as hell. What is that thing, like over 5,000 pounds, because it's got like 7 powertrains.
Yeah.
And that thing can still do 0 to 60 in a snapping your neck time. It still handles the weight well. So now that it's just an EV, it's going to be on the heavier side, but I guarantee you driving that, you're not going to feel like it's as heavy as it actually is. I come on, man, like, bring it out. Like, the good thing about this, our electric future, from a purely enthusiast and journalistic point of view, is companies like Polestar. Polestar was, again, you know, people knew them, but not a lot. Now you're going to look at this, and people are going to, you know, you're going to see a review on it on, say, Top Gear or the Grand Tour or something to that vein, or Shifting Lanes. You're going to see a review of it on Shifting Lanes and be like, tell me more about these guys.
Please give it.
And that's what I love. And, like, you know, 10 years ago, who was Rimac? You know, and now Rimac does a lot of the electric motor engineering for the big electric, like all those bespoke. The Pininfarina and a couple others use Rimac technology.
Yeah, and not for nothing, they just bought Bugatti.
So yeah, absolutely, and things like that. So, like, you know, you're looking at all these different electric, and what I love about it is so you went through a classic era of British sports cars, right, where a bunch of guys in their garages produces some really good-looking cars with questionable electronic choices, and they just spat out these cars, you know, like MG, TVR, Austin Healey, you know, all these different things. Checked out a bunch of really cool little cars, and I think because the simplicity at which it is to make a chassis for an electric car, right? You don't really have to worry about doing your engine. You don't have to develop an engine. Someone's developed the motors. Someone's already developed the battery packs. And you just build the skateboard, as it were, right? And then you can almost put any body you want on it. And I think that's going to promote a lot more of these sort of small brands. Not saying Polestar is a small brand, but it might inspire a small brand to just start chucking out all these little sports cars and things like that. And then the more that's competition, these things become a little bit more affordable and things like that. So you're going to see, I think we're poised for a golden age of sports cars from a choice perspective. And again, it's not electric, or it's not a gas engine, but let's face it, gas engines are being killed off. You know, we're in good hands. Is the long way of saying that is we are in good hands with these electric cars, and cars that look like this, and cars that say, hey, electric motors are great for performance, they're great for efficiency, and we can give you the best of both worlds. How are you doing, Owen? Welcome to the stream. And things of that nature. But unless you had anything else you wanted to talk about on that, we are going to our third topic of the day, assuming I can actually find where I'm at. And that is...
No, I just wanted people to look at that, and that was it, because it's gorgeous.
So what we are going to look at now is something, well, completely different. If a lot of our viewers will know that we like to sit here and we like to look at cool builds or interesting builds or builds that were like, no. But I wanted today to kind of bring up a vehicle that you don't really think about stripping out, making a track car out of it, making it impractical. Well, it never was really that practical, but from a mark where if you tear out the interior, build the motor, and put a body kit on it, you've effectively ruined the value. And these people are snobby as hell. And that type of vehicle, the build we're going to look at today is a Ferrari a Ferrari 550 tuned in Japan.
550. Yeah.
And it has a lot of JDM styling elements you can see from the riveted on fenders, the side exhaust, although that's not strictly JDM. But this was built in Japan to give you some of the highlights on this thing. The motor is fully built. It has a custom ITB setup in the engine bay. It has over 600 horsepower. It is a fully manual gearbox, race suspension, fully gutted interior with a roll cage. It is designed to be a track toy and a sound that unfortunately I can't play, but a sound that will touch you at the deepest and most intimate parts of your soul. But this is a Ferrari. How many times do you see people who aren't a race team gut it, add a body kit, add canards, carbon fiber? How many times do you see people doing this to Ferrari? And that's why I think this is right, because all Ferrari people are like, oh, I bought it, I shall not drive it, I shall not modify it, I will only put gas in it and charge the battery, but that's it, because if I do anything crazy to it, Mr. Ferrari will get mad and I won't be able to buy another one. And this how I came across this was actually DDE just bought a 550 Maranello that they're planning to do something very similar to this. So I wanted to see kind of what it looked like. If there was like a masonry or a wide body kit out there for it that kind of made it look more like the GT1 race car, because this actually raced against the C6 Corvette, which we will talk about in a moment. Hey, Gregson just subscribed.
Yeah, I wanted to see it come through. I was like, oh, my personal account is subscribed. Yeah, I don't see it.
So, but like this, I mean, I personally love this thing. I love what it represents. I've always liked this in the 575, and I've never liked Ferrari because of this general snootiness and the, applying to buy a car nonsense. But Greg, thoughts?
Yeah, this is awesome. Do more of this. Everyone should gut their Ferraris. Honestly, this is ridiculous. It's so cool. We were talking about this the other day. I don't necessarily agree with your opinion of the, I would never buy a Ferrari because of the snootiness. I know that's a lot of people's opinions. Like, I buy a car because I like a car. I don't like, if I wanted to buy like a pink VW Beetle, I would go out and do that, not just because it's a pink VW Beetle or because VW Beetles are terrible cars or
Greg.
Like driving a pink VW Beetle, but if I liked that car, I would go out and buy that car. Same with like this. If I wanted a 550 Maranello and I wanted to gut it, I would go out and do that. If I wanted to just go out and buy a 458 and just drive the living hell out of it for however many years and put 200, 300,000 miles on it, if I had that kind of money, that's what I would do. I don't care if the company's snooty or what sort of aura is around anything. If I like something, I'm just going to go buy it and drive it, end of story. And that's exactly what this person did. They went out and bought what they wanted, they gutted it, and they made it their own, and that's cool. And I love builds like that, especially when you take something like this, which is traditionally just a big front engine Ferrari GT car, and they turned it into this like epic track monster. That's cool. I love that. That's fantastic. And this is probably one of the coolest builds I've seen all year, if not in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I kind of want. Another reason I wanted to look at this car, apart from, like, first of all, I was a big fan of these when they first came out. I loved the race car. It just so happened to race against one of my other all-time favorite cars, which is a C6 Z06. So it was like, I always leaned towards the Corvette just because American pride. But, like, these things are amazing. I mean, there's no beating the sound of a V12 with a proper exhaust on it. It is an amazing soundtrack, just like a V8 rumble of a pushrod V8 from the Corvette was distinctly Corvette. This is distinctly Ferrari, and that's what I love about it, is the fact that it's so raw and everything. And I also wanted to showcase something like this that we found on the internet, because a lot of the cars or builds we've kind of reviewed lately have been we'll just say mixed, right? Like, so even though I find it, I love it, like the engineering behind putting a K in a Corvette, it's not really, it's, you could have for the same money done an LS3, right? It just so happened he had
Right.
the kit, but I love the fact that he had an engine that made a ton of power lying around in his shop, not sitting in a chassis. Okay, what chassis do I have? Okay, it's a C6 convertible, arguably the worst C6. So, it's not like he did a Z06
Hmm.
or a ZR1 or any of that stuff. So he took a car that I wasn't really ever going to think about buying anyway and made it kind of cool because he took things he had and made something that's going to go sevens, if not in the sixes. That's really cool. But it's sacrilege.
Yeah.
And then the same thing, we saw the T5 BMW,
Right.
which was an amazing piece of kit, but it was some questionable visual, questionable stereo tactics and stuff. So we always been kind of we've
Right.
had, a lot of our stuff has come across in a negative light. I wanted to take a build that somebody did that is completely, against the grain that we actually like. That this thing is actually amazing.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, more people should be looking
It
at
is.
these Ferrari. These aren't really collector Ferraris. So just like DDE did, they're buy it straight pipe, all of this sort of stuff, and make something epic because I
Yeah.
want this car more than I want any other Ferrari. Even though, like the owner says, it's impossible to drive on the
Yeah.
street because you have to use like headphones, 6-point harnesses. So like going through the drive-through, you're like, all that other sort of stuff. But it doesn't matter
Yeah.
because it's cool. It's a fun vehicle. Like if you just toned it down just a hair and made it a little more streetable, I mean, this is this might be the best 550 I've ever seen. So like we do like builds, we do enjoy builds,
Yeah.
we
I
do
think.
have positive things to say. So when you guys submit your stuff, don't fear that we're just going to rag on it. So I just wanted to get that across.
Yeah. I can. I can see this happening with a lot of other base, like, or quote unquote base Ferraris, from the past like 40, 50 years, even like old 308s that are not really known for their reliability. I could see them making builds out of this. Not, they already have done builds out of 308s out of like this. Ferrari Californias, a lot of people don't like the new Californias or the California Ts. Um, they're fetching a premium now because of this insane car market. But I can see California is doing. You can do the same thing with this. V8 turbo. It could bring a ton of horsepower with the right tuning and the right setup. But stripped out California, front engine, same as similar to this. If you do like a full gut and full track build, those would be absolutely epic, and you'd probably get them at a lot cheaper than you'd get a 458 or anything like that. So I can see this happening with other, sort of lower level Ferraris as time goes on. And I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I
And
think
more people
that you
should
make
do
a
it. I
great
think.
point. Like everybody has like these older cars that are okay, so they are collectible, but they're not. You know, if you go and you ask someone front engine V12 Ferraris, you're going to go down a pretty long list before you get to this one. And I think that's what's kind of cool about it. But
Right.
the only thing with these is why they're going to go up in value is apart from the 599 limited edition, this was the last front engine V12 Ferrari to be widely, and that's the big denoting factor, widely offered with a manual gearbox. Like I said, the 599 had an option for manual, and those are selling for over $1 million at the moment. But here's the big
Yeah.
thing in the collector car market right now, and if you can, it's really simple. Does it have more than 8 cylinders? Yes. Does it have a manual gearbox? Yes. Buy it, because even in this market, those things over a 10, 20, 30-year lifespan are going to skyrocket, especially when internal combustion stops becoming a
Oh, yeah.
brand new thing, or becomes less and
Yep,
less prevalent
100%.
in there. So, like, man, this thing's it really makes me want to get one of these. I just can't.
I know.
In due time.
Yeah, no, I mean, even these are still going for $150,000, $200,000. They're like, and that's the cheap
Yeah.
old Ferraris
So,
right now.
So,
That's
moving
cool.
on from this one, we are actually now going to start talking about. So, here's the thing. We're all car guys, right? I just mentioned that I would love to get my hands on one of these down the road as a potential sports car purchase, things like that. So, we're car guys, right?
Yeah.
Greg Hansen and I, we talk every day. In addition to just being business partners, we're car guys. So it's like we're talking about getting this car, we're talking about getting that car, all those sort of things. So
We're not friends. We're just business
yeah, I
partners.
didn't
Car
watch
guys,
the
not
'97
friends.
Masters in Greg's living room. In any rate,
Nope. Nope. Definitely not. Didn't happen. Fake news.
so in other news, we always talk about it. So like we figured, well, we host a live show where we talk to people. Maybe we should bring this conversation to the people so that we can actually include you guys and like
Yes. So we need your help with this
because
segment.
let's face it, like we need your help. But in addition to being car people, we're also content creators. So like, why don't you guys? We want to run through a few cars that we're thinking about potentially maybe buying at some point. You know, maybe soon, maybe a little down the road. But so we're looking at sports cars. So Greg, I think you kind of made this list. So right now, what we have, I know it looks like a mid-engine British sports car. Well, actually, that's our old Aston Martin, which is actually
Yes.
another one of.
For some reason, that photo looks photoshopped. I don't know why. That's a real
Yeah,
photo. To me, that first one looked like it was photoshopped. That's a real thing. That
Nope.
was I was there. That's real.
He went to
Not
Mad
not,
Whip,
not photoshopped.
but yeah, like we have, so you can tell. And for so let me just, Greg, why don't you actually run through the list because we have like we normally do. We have a slideshow kind of going on, and kind of go through there.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about each one and chat. You let us know what you think we should be looking at because if you want us to get it,
Yes.
you'd like you to watch some stuff.
So yeah. So here is the here's the list, and for chat that's on the stream now live, we want your input in the comments now. And if you're watching this at a later date, either on a stream highlight or on the video on demand later, comment in the comment section. So which one of these do you think we should pick up, or would you like to see content on any of these cars? So the list runs as the C8 Corvette, the C6 Z06 Corvette, which you're seeing right now, a 911, because 911, it's literally the sports car benchmark. You have to include it on a list of sports cars if you're making a list of sports cars. A Shelby Mustang GT350R, Alfa Romeo 4C, Jaguar F-Type R, Lotus Evora, or Aston Martin V8 Vantage. And those are all cars that obviously are sports cars and they fetch a premium. So you can pick up any of these for between 50 to 100 grand. And that would be an amazing thing if any of us could spend that kind of money on a sports car at any point in time. You can pick up some of these for even cheaper than that. C6 Z06s, you can find them in the 30s and 40s right now. And if the market, went down to where it was, 2 or 3 years ago, you could find them for 20. Or even, a really good one for mid 30s, like low mileage and all that stuff. 911's probably not the 992 you're seeing on screen, maybe an older 997 or something like that. Alfa Romeo 4Cs, they're between $45,000 to $60,000 depending on what you look at. Jaguar F-types, you can find them as cheap as $45,000 right now, all the way up to the new ones, which are $100,000 plus. Lotus Evora, the newer ones are like $100,000 and $120,000 for like the GT models, but older ones, the Evora 400s, you can find for in the $60,000 to $70,000 range. Aston Martin V8 Vantage, same thing. Good ones right now you can find between 60 and 70 in this market, but traditionally you can find them between 30 and 50. So the prices are kind of all over the place, but any of these in the 50 to 100K range would be awesome to own. So what would you guys like us to buy and sort of make some content on? Like, what's the most interesting on that list? C8 Corvette, C6 Z06, Porsche 911, Shelby Mustang GT350R, Alfa 4C, Jaguar F-Type R, Lotus Evora, and Aston Martin V8 Vantage. I don't think there's a wrong answer here because they're all pretty amazing cars. Personal preference, if I had to make a top 3 on that list, in no order, I probably put mine at C6 Z06, probably the F-Type on there, and probably the Evora. They're all really cool cars. What about you?
Well, Let me just pull up the entirety of this list because I want to make sure I don't forget something here. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and to be clear, we did own an Aston Martin V8 Advantage in the past. That's what you're looking at right now. This is actually the one that was owned by Doug DeMuro as well as Tavares. And then I had purchased that from Tavares. Freddie and I are friends, and we talked about cars all the time. And this was back when he was doing his twin turbo Lamborghini Gallardo Spider, and he's like, hey. I could use the cash to help with modifying that car. Do you want to buy the Aston? And I was like, sure. I think that'd be really cool. It was $36,000. Back then, that same car right now is probably $50,000 in this market. But you could find those Astons for like 35, 36 all day long. Manual, high mileage, but pretty good cars. So on this list, this Aston Martin V8 Advantage will be a different car other than that because we do not own it anymore.
Right. So my top three, if we're just looking at this list, so I'll just go through the cars I would immediately eliminate right off the bat. Lotus Evora, F-Type, and believe it or not, the C8. There's just something about the C8 that, I don't know, doesn't really do it for me. Another one on there that I'd probably have to get rid of is the 4C because Alfa Romeo's it's built like an exotic with the engine from a compact, like, you know what I mean, like, so you're gonna have exotic car problems. And even though it goes and it's fun, it's a really fun vehicle, it's just I've sat in one and I don't really need that in my life right now. So that leaves in no particular order the Z06, the 911, and the 350R Shelby Mustang. To be brutally honest, I don't even think, if we're talking about next cars, next builds, next things like that, the Shelby's not even, I know I own a Mustang. I know the GT350 is an amazing piece of engineering. But at the end of the day, my Mustang's going to look better, sound better, and go better. I'm not really going to need something just because it has a Voodoo in it. Right. The Voodoo is, from an engineering perspective, an amazing engineering feat that Ford did, right? That engine, 5.2 liters at the time, one of, if not the biggest flat plane V8s ever made.
Yeah.
The fact that they managed to make it flat plane and not have it sound like a Ferrari, or even the new Z06, it still sounded like it still had a throaty tone to it. I think was an amazing piece of engineering. Anytime an American V8 revs over 8,000 RPM, you're shocked and amazed and things like that. But they do have oil consumption issues, and I'm going to make a full video on this at some point. But the stock Coyote can rev to 7,500 RPM, so you get 95% of the thrill of a high revving V8 with none of the therefore downsides that a Voodoo brings. So that leaves Z06 or 911. I've always wanted to kind of play around with the 911, but the 911 I want and would only really consider, to be 100% honest, is something in the GT family, probably a GT3 or even a Touring or things like that, because those 4-liter flat sixes are the best sounding 6 cylinders. I mean, find me a better sounding one. You can't. They sound so good. They make crazy power. Power.
They really are.
4 liters, 500 plus horsepower. And what I think, especially when you get into the 997s, the 991s, the 992s, all of them, in what are the best looking Porsches, 911 specifically, ever made. That would be a lot of fun. But on the flip side, those aren't exactly affordable right now. It's a little bit, and that's like the dream. So really what that leaves is the C6 Corvette, specifically the C6 Z06, which is kind of okay. So the C5 and the LS6 was okay. Chevy's onto something here. That C6 Z06 was a game changer. 7-liter LS7 V8, 500 plus horsepower, magnesium cradle, fully modern of the time suspension, aerodynamics, aluminum parts for lightweight in the body and things of that nature. It dominated racing for a ton of time. and LS7s, you can get over 650 horsepower and NA. I mean, that's all you need in a car that weighs so little.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I think it's probably up there, if not my vote for best looking Corvette, especially when you do some like, you know,
Oh, I
you
agree.
do some
Hands down.
subtle body mods to it to give it a little bit more attitude. That's I mean, of
Mm,
this list,
yeah.
that's the one that's both obtainable and from what all of it does. I mean, the only downside to that car is the interior. Well, let's face it. How often do you look at your interior when you're having fun driving your car? If you're spending an inordinate amount of time
Well,
doing
yeah.
that,
I
you're
mean,
doing the wrong thing. You're enjoy like and
yeah, and you can update interiors. You can get new seats. You can carbon fiber things. You can do whatever whatever's needed. So you have a lot of things that you can do. You can get new steering wheel, new shift knob. You can and if you go to the right shop, you can have them custom make you an interior if you have enough money. So it's it's something that can be changed. It's not something that should be a deal breaker. Um, unless it's like your daily driver and you're like every time you get in you're like, man, I wish this interior was more nice, then it's probably not the car for you. You probably should go with an F-Type or something like that because it's just a nicer, more modern, more luxurious place to be. But if you're going for all out, like, hell yeah, brother, like America bald eagles coming
so
out
if
the
you're
exhaust,
Cletus,
you should go for the C6. Yeah, exactly. Hell yeah, brother. You should definitely get the C6 over anything else on this list. So, but I agree with you. I mean, over on this whole list, I'm looking off to the side because I have another computer over here all the time. I'm basically just looking at the list. Yeah, I mean, the best value for money on this list for sure is the C6 Z06, and they made a lot of them. Even just from a performance perspective, I think it's the best value in that respect, but also just in the collector's aspect too, because obviously 911s are always going to like do a quick dip and then go back up. That's just the Porsche 911 bubble. But from a collector's aspect, they didn't make a metric ton of Z06s. They made, I want to say, in the entirety of the C6 platform, they made, geez, I don't know, 10,000 of them, maybe. I have to go back and look at the numbers. My numbers are very wrong. But from 2010 through 2013, the numbers are drastically smaller because they made way more Grand Sports than they did anything else. They actually made more Grand Sports from like '08 through the end of the run in 2013 than they did base models, which spoke to like how people liked the looks of the Z06 more than the
yeah,
base Corvette, obviously. So that Grand Sport was that sort of nice packaging between the two, and that carried through the C7. I'm sure there'll be a Grand eventually too. So I think that of all of these, I agree with you. I'd probably choose the Z06 if it was boiled down to it. The F-Type R though, that's probably, if I'm choosing between a couple of them, the F-Type is really high on my list. I think it's an all-time great design car. It's fast. It's got 550 horsepower out the gate, and you can put pulleys on it and tune it from Velocity AP, and people are getting 680 at the crank, which is awesome. And that's without any other insane crazy mods to it. And the cool carbon fiber kits you can do with like little winglets and skirts and wings on the back. There's a lot you can do to that car to make it look even cooler that a lot of people don't do. So I don't know. For me, it's probably between the Z06 and the F-Type R. For value, the Z06 wins for sure because Jaguars don't really hold their value over time. Plus, with the Jaguar, you don't get a manual. The only option is a ZF 8-speed automatic box, which is a great transmission. It's in everything right now because it's a fantastic transmission. But again, if it's not a 6-speed manual in a Corvette, which is just a classic combo in my opinion.
yeah. One thing I actually forgot. I can't believe I forgot about this because this is actually something I do think about quite a lot. The Vantage. I can't believe I forgot about that thing, man. Because I've actually.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I would buy that car because it's. I mean, even really good example or decent examples of it right now are in the 40 to 50 range. I would look for one,
Mm-hmm.
believe it or not, with where the motor has left the chat, i.e., a blown motor, and
Yeah.
why? Because
F in the chat.
because one, that AJ that comes in it can't really do much to. You can supercharge it, but we were talking about shortening the lifespan of an
$25,000.
$25,000, and you really run the risk of that motor just saying no. Like, forget it, I'm out. No, really. And it got me thinking, okay, the AJ is a dual overhead cam V8. They put a V12 in these things. Would a Coyote fit? I mean, think about it. Now, you have heard...
I would imagine.
It's just with the Coyote, it all comes down to width, baby. It's all about that width in the hips, man. But here's the thing with that.
It's all in the hips.
Here's the thing with that. So the V12 made, I think, between 500 and 600 horsepower, if memory serves, in that car. The V12 Vantage.
So which one?
Your generation.
I want to say 510.
So that's easily achievable with a Coyote. The Coyote with long tubes sounds epic. You know, it's not like you're sacrificing sound. And you have a much more reliable, fun engine. I don't want crazy horsepower in this thing because this car is just as fun to drive at 10 miles an hour as it is 100 miles an hour. Like, that's the cool thing about Aston Martins.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I forgot about that one. I wanted to kind of chime in, things like that. But, yeah, like that. But, man, those Z06s, man. I mean, a 427 under the hood, cam, heads, ported heads, you know, big intake, 600 horsepower without even really trying because that's...
Yeah.
You know, that's the glory of displacement. You know, I
Yeah. Best performance value in this, I'd say, is actually the C8, which is why I just wanted to mention that because, like, the C6 Z06 aside, which is a great performance bargain, but best performance value, I think, is the C8 because the platform, I mean, the base ones, we're doing 0 to 60 in the low 3 seconds. Like, that's bananas from a car that's less than 100 grand.
I mean, engineering wise, that's an amazing piece of kit. Again, you know, we're reading everything, but it's no manual. Again,
yeah, I wouldn't get
no manual again. You know? And I'm sorry, unless I'm going on I don't go to the track a ton. I'd like to fix that problem, but I don't go to a ton, so I don't need the fastest thing. And engagement is what I'm about. I want to feel engaged. I want to feel like, okay, that thing accelerated through the gears and I did it. You know, like that sort of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Antoine has an interesting question. What if you upgraded the V8 Vantage to that same generation of V12 that you were just talking about? What's the price of the V12 manual going for if you were lucky to find one or get one? You can find, it really depends. If you find a manual V12 Vantage S, you're looking anywhere between $150,000 to $200,000 right now. They have gone way up in value. It is stupid how much money those are going for. A manual V12 Gen 1 that doesn't have the S attached to it, anywhere between $80,000 to $130,000 depending on mileage and depending on condition. So it's a lot. It's a big upgrade, honestly. So as far as price is concerned, like manual V8 Vantages you can find for between $50,000 and $60,000 right now in this market with with decent mileage on it. V12s you're probably going to end up paying double for about the same car.
And that goes back.
So
goes back to my point earlier. If you're looking for a car to invest in, find an exotic brand, make sure it has more than 8 cylinders and has a third pedal. I mean, just look at the
100%. Yeah,
they're just going to go climb and climb and climb. No, that would be an interesting swap if you can get an old V12, do that. But I think they had to make a lot of tweaks. I'm not saying that to put a Coyote in, wouldn't have to make a lot of tweaks. But I think there was a lot of chassis tweaks to put the V12 in, if memory serves. I could be wrong on that, but that's the thing. But like, I also like the idea of.
Whoa. Sorry, I have to go close my window. Everything's falling.
Hurricane Gregson. But yeah, like
it's literally a hurricane going on in here.
But,
oh my god! It blew some dish liquid over. Dish soap. Good god! That probably was like a 50-mile-an-hour gust that just came through the window. That was so random.
Oh
it's late in the stream and there's 4 people.
Going live, it's always a risk. Always fun. But
going live.
I love the idea. Well, let's put it this way, right?
Yes.
This Vantage that you're looking at has Volvo infotainment system, Volvo mirrors, right?
Yep.
and it was a
Yeah,
FOMOCO
V70R nerds.
FOMOCO car. So even though it's not really in the
Hmm.
same family because it wasn't around, I think the 3 valve would be the appropriate V8 to plop in that. Um, I
Yeah.
love the idea of putting people popping the hood and seeing a Ford engine. Like I love that. Like I was actually really rooting for.
That would be kind of cool.
I really wanted to see Chris at BS for Build. His original plan for his Vantage was to 2J swap it, but the AJ was in good condition, so he made the right choice there. But that, like, I love the idea of people popping the hood
Yeah.
and being like, "This isn't the engine it came from." Yes, it's better, but
Yeah. I would like to I would really like to see if you could fit a Coyote, great. But I'd love to see like a 4.6 or even a 302 under the hood of that thing. Because that would just be even more hilarious to me. You're like, oh man, Aston Martin Vantage, beautiful, so cool. Pop the hood, and then you see a 4.6 or a 302 under there, and you're just like, what happened? What did you do? Why is this here? Where's the Aston Martin? I think it would just be an
a
excellent troll
Carby
car. That'd be
350
great.
in there, 351, I should say. Sorry.
Just put a Barra in
That
there.
would be interesting. I would be down for that. The bear is huge though.
That would be cool. I know, Barra's huge, but
But I
that'd
think
be
it's
that'd
right
be
for
a
it
cool
because
swap.
really it's a valuable car. But at its lowest, it was the same price as a new
Yeah,
Camry. So it's not crazy collectible. Obviously, the
right.
V12s are. But give me, like, that would be such a cool car because, like I said, driving that thing around, it was so much fun to drive as it was intended to be as a sports car. But it was just as equally fun to drive at the speed
Yeah,
limit, around town because, like, it just made you
yeah,
feel special. And, like, that was the coolest thing about it. Like, I've never
yeah.
replicated that experience. Like, I've come, different experiences, driving around in a Raptor, you just feel like, get the fuck out of my way now. And they would probably do it.
Yes, I own this road.
So like,
Go
there's so
away.
much stuff to that, but like, I'm really curious. And if you're watching this in the highlights, I want to know of the 6, what would you get and why? Are we talking nonsense? Are we doing that
Yes.
thing where we just, it's not a Volvo because we're the Volvo channel. I've done research and
Yeah.
it says we are the Volvo channel. So, at any rate, but real quick, before we sign off, anything you wanted to add, Gregson?
No, I think we're good. That was basically all I wanted to cover. Huge shout out to you guys that stay on for so long. I know it's only a few of you, but thank you so much for watching, all 6 of you that are on right now. We do this every single week, Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If we get this popular enough and more people will end up watching, tell your family, tell your friends, spread it on some car forums. We'll do more of these, and we can then just keep ramping this up and do even more streams for you. Hopefully this summer we'll be able to do some really cool streams for you of like either doing work on our cars or going to car meets or whatever, because it'll be nice weather out and we're not cooped up inside when hurricanes are basically blowing outside of our window, obviously. So
Yeah,
that would be super fun to do. So also, if you want to us to do certain live streams, leave it in the comments or suggest it. And if you did join that group or any of our other places, suggest what you want to see. It'd be really cool to do some live streams elsewhere. I know that the New York Auto Show is coming up, and I'm sure one of the 3 of us will be going, most likely Hanson, and we'll probably do some live streams from there as well. So let us know what you want to see, and we'll try to make
absolutely,
it happen
guys.
for you
Real
guys.
quick, just to answer Antoine's last question before we sign off here, why not go all in on a ZR1? Cost. ZR1s are just way more expensive. You can get
Yeah,
you could build
you can't.
a 600 plus horsepower
There,
Z06 for less than a ZR1 would cost.
Yeah, that I was gonna say they're cheaper than you expect right now. There are a couple out there that are in the 70s and 80s, but again, 70, $80,000 for a Corvette is hard to swallow. Even though the C8, a lot of people don't like it. I'm not personally a fan. Like from a performance standpoint, $70, $80,000 gets you real close to a C8. And I don't know, a Z06 at 40, 50K and dropping 30K into it, you're talking about one of the most badass Corvettes out there at all because you're going to have so much more fun with that as opposed to a ZR1, because with the ZR1s are at this point, they're basically collector's items. Not a ton of people are putting a ton of miles on them. They're going to go up in value. So I don't. I'd rather have the Z06 and drive it and have fun with it. And if the motor blows, you can throw in another LS or another LS7 if you wanted to, and it would still be cheaper than a ZR1.
You know, and then the last bit is that all LS engines are reliable. You just got to replace the trunnions, especially if you have miles on it. And if you don't know what a trunnion is, it's the pivot point on a rocker, and that is the trunnion. So push rod, rocker. At any rate, that those are bad, are not engineered really all that great in LSs. It's the LS's weak point. You fix that, any LS is going to run way longer than you than you need it to. But as always, guys.
Yeah.
Oh,
the most.
Greg has more to say.
Oh, sorry. Before you sign out, obviously the most reliable thing, the most reliable LS apparently, according to Chevy engineers, is the LS3. So if you look on any forums, the LS3 will be the most reliable, and that's directly from Chevy. So that's the last thing I'll say.
Well, as much as joy and excitement as I see in chat, thanks again, guys, for watching. As always, hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, follow if you haven't, and if you want the basic. Hey, real quick, Junior Rubio, first ever outside supporter during a stream. I just wanted to shout you out, man. Thank you so much. Be like Junior. Support the channel if you want. We're gonna put it back into. I'm gonna put any back into the Mustang. Thank you so much, Junior. I didn't want to get off stream without mentioning that. Again, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week at 8 o'clock. Head over to Shifting Lanes and Shifting Lanes 2. We have 4 videos per week, so if you like us or like the cars we drive, definitely check out those channels. But for this one, that's a wrap. We'll catch you next time, fellas.
See you guys.